Let's imagine that you've completed your training with your flight instructor. He's recommended you to a designated pilot examiner and you pass the check ride. Congratulations. But now what do you do? What can you do with the certificate and when can you do it? Does it expire? How do you keep it current? That's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to talk about that right now. So let's say that you just passed your sport pilot check ride, or really any check ride. Getting to that point is a big deal. You've invested a lot into the process and now you are ready to enjoy the benefits. Only what are those benefits and when exactly can you begin enjoying them? Well, I have great news for you. You can begin enjoying them right away. If you successfully pass the check ride, part of what a designated pilot examiner, or DPE, does for you is issue you a temporary pilot certificate. You and he will sign that temporary pilot certificate and then you are authorized to exercise the full benefits of your sport pilot rating. That means not only can you fly, but you can immediately take someone along for the flight besides your flight instructor. If your spouse or kids or friends have been waiting, the wait is over. Well, that is if you feel ready to take them flying. There may be reasons you want to wait. Don't feel rushed to take someone up. Just know that you legally can if you want. So, let's talk about that temporary pilot certificate. It's temporary and it looks temporary. It's printed on paper and it says in big letters at the top, Temporary Airman Certificate. But it is just as valid as the permanent plastic certificate that will follow a few weeks later in the mail. That means you get all the privileges and of course have to operate within the limitations of the certificate. Basically, the privileges are that you can fly a two-place light sport aircraft powered parachute and take a passenger with you if you choose. You can fly from airports and you can fly all the way up to nighttime as long as your powered parachute is equipped with the right lighting. You can also fly up to 10,000 feet above mean sea level. That's nearly 2 miles. If you're flying over really high mountainous terrain, you could even fly above 10,000 feet MSL as long as you stay within 2,000 feet of the ground. That covers nearly everything most people want to do with a powered parachute. But there are limitations. That is a far longer list and we'll talk about those another time. But mostly it's just a list of things you probably don't have a desire to do anyway. So let's talk a little bit more about the temporary nature of the Temporary Airman Certificate. It's considered an interim certificate. It's issued subject to the approval of the FAA pending your permanent certificate. The FAA is going to check over your DPE's work and make sure that all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. The FAA also makes a point that the Temporary Airman Certificate can become void if certain things happen. Number one is upon your receipt of a certificate of greater duration to replace it. That just means that once your plastic green card arrives, you should use that as your pilot certificate and put the temporary certificate in your scrapbook. Number two is if the FAA finds that an error has been made in the temporary certificate's issuance. Your examiner is responsible for getting all of the details right, but his work is going to be checked by the FAA. If your instructor and examiner use the FAA's automated IACRA system, the chances of an error are pretty low compared to using paper forms and a stubby pencil. Still, it happens. And if it does happen, then your certificate is void. Number three is if the FAA discovers that the certificate was issued illegally or as a result of fraud or misrepresentation. As unlikely as it seems, some examiners have been caught selling pilot certificates or ratings. The FAA gets extremely frowny about that, and examiners who are caught committing fraud can end up behind bars. And then, of course, all the certificates issued by that DPE are suspect. Just not a good thing all the way around. Number four is upon the refusal or failure by the holder to accomplish a flight check by a flight standards inspector if so requested. That is part of quality control. Here's an example. Let's say that the FAA discovers or suspects a bad DPE. That makes all of that examiner's certificate suspect. The FAA may want to do something of a reinspection of an applicant to make sure that the applicant passed based on merit and not on a stack of Benjamins. By turning down such an opportunity to fly with the feds, you could lose your pilot certificate. Honestly, I've never heard of that happening in the sport pilot world. But oddly, the FAA is very quiet about investigations for privacy reasons. That means that it could happen regularly as part of investigations on suspect DPEs, and I'm just not aware of it. Number 5 is just the expiration date of the temporary certificate. The temporary airman certificate expires after 120 days. Within that time, you should have received your permanent plastic certificate. In fact, you should receive it within 90 days. If you haven't received it, you should contact your examiner so that he can contact the FAA to see what the problem is. While the FAA is tracking down the problem, the FAA Aviation Safety Inspector, or ASI, will send you another temporary certificate. Only an ASI could do that. Your DPE definitely cannot. If you get a new temporary, the clock starts over as to the conditions above. But don't be too concerned about all of this. Odds are in your favor that everything is going to go smoothly. Okay, great. You have your pilot certificate. You're flying. You're happy. What's next? When do you have to renew your license? The good news is that you don't. Your pilot certificate is forever. It doesn't expire. However, you do need to stay current in order to exercise it. And in case you are wondering what the word exercise means to the FAA, it means use it. First of all, you really don't have to do anything to happily fly with your certificate for 2 years. But if you want to fly passengers, you need to make sure that you have recent flight experience as pilot in command. That means that you need to make sure that you have taken off and landed 3 times within 90 days of putting a passenger in the back seat. That makes sense when you think about it. How many months would you really want to go without flying and then take responsibility for taking someone along as a passenger? I feel rusty even driving a car if I haven't driven for a few weeks. So when I was based exclusively up north, I would often go the entire winter without flying. That meant that before I could legally take someone flying, I had to do 3 takeoffs and 3 landings in a powered parachute. Takeoffs and landings always come in pairs, by the way. Now that didn't mean I had to do full stop landings. I could take off, do 2 touch and goes, and land. Done deal. Didn't involve a flight instructor or anyone. Then I could take a passenger or student up flying. If you're flying regularly, you don't even have to worry about doing that. Just flying once a month will keep you current, at least in the minimal regulatory sense. All that is left to talk about here are flight reviews. Even though there isn't an expiration date on pilot certificates, you still have to remain current in another sense. Within 2 years of flying, you have to have worked with a flight instructor and get an endorsement for completing a flight review. It makes sense that you have 2 years after getting your certificate before that kicks in. After all, you just spent an extended period of time training with an instructor. But after 2 years pass and before you fly again, the FAA requires that you get a flight review or an equivalent. We'll focus on the flight review. Just know that equivalents exist. To quote the FAA, a flight review consists of a minimum of 1 hour of flight training and 1 hour of ground training with a flight instructor. The review must include a review of the current general operating and flight rules of Part 91 and a review of those maneuvers and procedures that, at the discretion of the person giving the review, are necessary for the pilot to demonstrate the safe exercise of the privileges of the pilot certificate. In reality, this is also a time to talk to the flight instructor about other things you would like to brush up on or learn. After all, you might as well get all you can get out of the experience. And it doesn't have to be the same flight instructor you originally trained with. Getting another point of view isn't a bad thing. And be aware that if you've been out of flying for a while, you may need more than just the minimum 2 hours of instruction, at least in the eyes of your flight instructor. That begs the question, do you have to get a flight review after 2 years? The answer is no. For example, you may be ill, caring for someone else who is ill, working, or just unable to enjoy flying for a couple years. No problem, take a break. All that means is that before you get back to flying, you need to get your flight review. I hope this has helped you. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Either I or another pilot can answer them for you. Finally, if you're interested in powered parachute flight instruction in either the Midwest or in Florida, please visit the link to easyflight.com in the description. Flight instruction is the very best way to get introduced to piloting. Thanks so much for watching, and blue skies.